Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY. This is the operator Hindsight for Haruka, the anniversary Cold Runner operator. Let's get into it. Haruka is a 6-star Abjurer in the supporter class. Trait of the archetype deals arts damage off skill. When skill is active, switches to healing mode and restores HP of allies instead. However, during this mode, they only heal 75% of attack. The design principle is pretty simple. They do damage off skill and healing in skill. Their distinction lies in that they provide survival bonus not just by pure healing, but also sanctuary, which is percentage damage reduction, making units more durable. Compared to conventional medics, they have slightly lower DP, the level of wandering medics, and have high inherent resistance at 25, which is a really high bar and makes them resilient against arch damage. They have a shorter attack interval at 1.6 seconds as compared to most medics' 2.85 seconds. Faster attack means they have a better chance to heal units back up before they take damage again. And finally, their signature feature, Sanctuary. Again, it raises the one-hit kill line of units and is effective on units that can be healed, mostly referring to MT operators and summons. Despite all these promising features, they do have their cons as well, and unfortunately, these problems turns out quite severe for their performance. Number 1, yes, they can do some damage off skill, but realistically, that damage is abysmal. I'd rather say that they trade a very significant healing downtime, where there's no healing at all, for the decent sustainability in skill. Number 2 is more of a historical issue. The past release Abjurers have had some questionable conditions for applying Sanctuary. They started out making the conditions related to HP percentages, which has coverage issues. Thankfully, they have improved that with recent Abjurers. Before we move on to talents, I was going to get Eyjafjallajökull Altar from the Spark in this banner, but then I also want to save some for Sakiko next month. So I decided to stack up some packs for what's coming next. That's when I would go to Lootbar for my top-ups. They have a 4.9 rating on Trustpilot, or to say more on a personal basis, I've used the platform for all of my purchases on EN server, and I have had no issues with the process. Lootbar offers great prices on the platform, up to 17% off, which can stack with a 6% new user account kill point. You can use the link in the description box and pin comment to sign up for that. Here's me getting the monthly card for this month from their cloud top-up services, which is easy and assuring to use. You just need to follow their instructions and the whole thing is done in a minute or two. As someone in a region where Google Play just doesn't work at all and plays on emulator, for me, Lootbar offers a great way for me to buy stubs in-game and save money in the process. So be sure to check out Lootbar on your next purchase using my exclusive link in the description and pinned comment below. Haruka's Talent 1, every attack interval an ally unit within range gains a bubble granting 30% Sanctuary. Bubbles will pop shortly after being damaged by an enemy. That action is done alongside an attack or heal action, or separately when there is no available target in range. The bubble can be applied on a non-operator, non-equipment unit like summons, as well as MT operators, so although she doesn't heal them, she can apply the Sanctuary nonetheless. Bubble applies will prioritize low HP targets like normal healing, and it only breaks from damage that resulted in actual HP loss. So if they are blocked, dodged, the bubble wouldn't break. Hoshigama Altar, once she's in negative HP, she's technically not losing HP anymore, so the bubbles also wouldn't break. The bubble also wouldn't break from any non-enemy source damage like Toxic Mist, and they will have a lingering 0.5 second duration before they break from taking damage. So for Haruka, her Sanctuary applies are no longer tied to HP percentages. The 0.5 second grace period makes sure that they are always effective for reducing damage and lingers for some extra time instead of just gone in an instant. The break logic also prevents them from breaking from random damage. The whole design is very considerate and a huge boost to her effectiveness. It is relatively weaker against fast-hitting enemies, but then they also tend to do less damage per hit, while Sanctuary as a percentage damage reduction is more significant on big DPH, so that's acceptable, and since the bubble apply is tied to attack intervals, having higher attack speed gives higher Sanctuary coverage. Talent 2, whenever a bubble pops, the unit bearing that bubble is healed by 25% of Haruka's attack, 28% at potential 5. That number uses the cached attack stats when the bubble is applied. This goes hand in hand with Talent 1, an extra healing instance that most importantly makes up for the healing void off skill and further shortens the downtime between heals. Effectively, that's about 150 to 170 healing and 100 HPS off skill. Definitely not reliable as the only sustain, but will buy time between skills and provides even higher HPS during skills. Haruka releases with her module trait update. She can now attack 2 targets off skill and heal 2 targets in skill. Upgrades go to her talent 2, the healing from bubble is unchanged, but the bubble breaking now has a 20% chance to recover 1 SP for its target. Base effect is basically double DPS and HPS when multi-targeting, but not as game-changing as it would be if it's on a single target medic, because Abjurus heals much faster and handles multi-healing better to start with. Also keep in mind that bubble application is tied to talent 1 only, so having the base doesn't make her apply 2 bubbles every interval. Upgrades bring SP recovery support based on enemies' damage frequency and Haruka's own attack interval. If the bubbles are always broken between her standard intervals, that's effectively plus 0.125 SP per second, which isn't that significant in my opinion. So overall, a support function upgrade module for HPS on a single target, there's only the improvement from attack attribute at 9.28%. The 2 target count is something, but just not that game changing. Not to mention her main skill 2, gives her 2 target healing to start with. The SP recovery is very situation dependent for only a slight improvement. If you really want that SP buff, I'd rather use Talopsis for that. In summary, an optional upgrade, but for her relevance, perhaps dominance in daily gameplay, I still recommend getting a level 1. Module X, which by just its base effect, would most definitely bring her higher HPS, but I'd also imagine that's not coming anytime soon. For skill recommendation, Skill 2 over Skill 3 over Skill 1. Skill 2 is a multi-target heal damage hybrid that adopts the 2-phase warm-up design, a new era, highly consistent, and powerful sustain option. If Eyjafjallajökull Altar Skill 1 was the PlayStation 4, then this skill is the PlayStation 5. Skill 3 is also a powerhouse. It's a long-duration survival skill that provides high sanctuary number, coverage, and decent HPS, while being able to disable enemies with Levitate. Although it's solid, I would also say 90% of the time you'll end up using Skill 2. It's not like the skill is mediocre, in fact it's full of potential. It's just less relevant and perhaps an overkill for most players, and Skill 2 is equally usable in some of these situations, so make your mastery plans accordingly. Skill 1 is a short cycle skill that provides higher HPS and the ability to apply bubbles to allies beyond range or chain bubble spawns from enemy attacks. But that concept honestly is a bit shaky and its performance is just not on par with the other 2 skills. Skill 1 attack speed plus 60 whenever a bubble pops during skill, an allied unit without a bubble within 8 surrounding tiles gains a bubble. This is a 15/25 20-second skill. Ideal HPS in the table here are when bubbles always break before Haruka applies the next bubble, but the numbers are actually more variable than just this. Bubble spawning from bricks follows the same bubble apply priority. The principle behind the skill is allowing bubbles to spread to units beyond range, and the staggering enemy attacks would spawn bubbles for close by units. Basically, A's bubble breaks spawns bubble for B, and moments later B's bubble breaks spawns bubble for A, creating a little chain reaction. But in practice, for units in range, Haruka with the attack speed increase already applies bubble frequently by herself, but for units beyond range, them getting the bubble is again a very situational thing, and expecting them to rely on the bubble healing only is unrealistic. If I were to design this skill, I would instead give Haruka higher attack but not attack speed, so that when the bubble breaks, they are more impactful, creating healing, and makes the bubble spreading more meaningful. Overall, not recommended. Skill 2, healing target plus 1, talent 1 target count plus 1, so 2 bubbles in each interval. Whenever an allied unit receives healing from Haruka, deals arts damage equal to 200% of the amount healed to 3 nearby targets. From second activation onwards, attack plus 40% and has unlimited duration. This is a 0/17 26-second skill. Masteries give her higher attack bonus and interestingly move some downtime to the first skill duration. Numbers below are the final stats after the second use. With increased attack, bubble breaking also heals more than off skill. Each heal will also do 1.28k DPH. Bubble breaking does about 480 damage. With skill 2, Haruka will heal 2 targets, 3 with module Y level 1, and bubbles 2 targets per interval. One unique thing for the skill is the healing based damage. We have damage based healing before, but the other way around is a first time in an operator's kit. Both the standard healing and the bubble breaking triggers damage, which does a 1.7 tile 3 target splash. The damage can scale from healing buffs, which isn't that common, only found in some kits or as a relic in IS. But with proper positioning, enemies can take damage from multiple healing instances at the same time. The two-phase warm-up design is the same one as Thorn's skill 3 and Typhon's skill 2. Instead of waiting for 60 seconds off skill, the pattern certainly is more ideal for an Abjura. The skill design is surprisingly simple for its effectiveness. Depending on incoming damage frequency, it does 400 to 550 HPS while providing 30% sanctuary. As a support, the DPS potential from this skill is surprisingly high as well. Healing and bubble breaking on one target can translate to up to 1.1k DPS for up to 3k DPS in a multi-splash situation. But realistically, having enemies deal damage to 3 units in a perfect positioning is almost never gonna happen. A comp to potentially take advantage of this is having a low block unit in front of a lane holder, perhaps a defender, then putting Haruka sideways to hold a choke. This is honestly not necessary, but you can do it for the fun. Because at the end of the day, it's still a sustained skill to start with. You can configure your positioning to better make use of the damage aspect, combo with operator that loses HP consistently, just don't force the damage. With the multi-healing, unlimited duration, the skill is not only reliable but also consistent, which many Abjura's kit designs fall short at. This is basically Quirker Skill 1 Pro Max, AFK friendly. For applications, a new daily AFK sustain option that gets popular very fast. The last popular option is AF Yellow Alter Skill 1, which has its advantage with the longer range, but besides healing elemental damage, Haruka Skill 2 just packs much more punch, both in terms of general survivability and additional damage. The combined power of high coverage, decent HPS, and sanctuary makes it one of the AFK skills that remains relevant in harder contents. LPN Skill 2 is dominant in daily, but you may never use it in IS. For Haruka, that's a different story, and you may still be using her Skill 2 in those situations. Skill 3, attack plus 55%, attack range expands, attack interval minus 0.6 seconds into 1 second. Bubble and Sanctuary effect increases to 2 times. Enemies that attacked allied bubbles are levitated for 4 seconds, taking 80% of Haruka's attack as arch damage per second. This is a 53/60 40-second long duration long cooldown skill. Skill range is the same as Chagoldia's Skill 3. The skill has attack increase, which increases both base and bubble healing, and also attack speed increase, which brings higher HPS and more frequent bubble applies. Those combined gives an ideal HPS of 977, with the Sanctuary in skill at 60%, which is honestly incredible. For mechanics, Levitate trigger uses the same mechanic as bubble brick triggers, so if an incoming damage doesn't break a bubble, the damage source doesn't get levitated either. What's very QOL is that the 0.5 second grace period before a bubble breaks from damage will register the levitate. The damage and levitate effect is dealt directly to the damage source, so it will affect invisible enemies, but of course, if the enemy is untargetable or invincible, it's not gonna work on them. So the cutting edge part about this skill, first of all, as we all mentioned, high damage reduction that cuts incoming damage by 60% plus the high HPS makes a super sustained combo. An incoming DPH of about 25,000 will be downscaled to 1k-ish and quickly healed up in 1 second. Levitate is a great way to consistently interrupt enemies' attacks. It's notably dominant against ranged enemies, which combined with the big range of the skill can keep enemies at a great distance while messing them up. It also works on multi-hit enemies, interrupting them on the first hit and avoid the rest of the damage. Due to the 0.5 second lingering duration, it's not like the bubble is strictly working only on the first enemy to hit it. Multiple enemies can be affected by the same bubble, and with 4 second levitate and 1 second bubble interval, it's possible to stall multiple groups of enemies at the same time. With that 0.5 second delay, it will also mean that there's only a 0.5 second downtime between bubbles, so that's great coverage both for sanctuary and crowd control, although the levitate part is more enemy dependent. So what role does this skill serve? It's one of those ultimate survival tools. Similar skills would be Shining, Nightingale, although they are somewhat old-fashioned, or for newer generations, Eyjafjallajökull Altar, Shu, Skill 3, etc. The skills that aim to get you through a tough wave of damage. The skill is most similar to Shu, Skill 3 with lower HPS but higher sanctuary, while both having some crowd control feature to stall enemies. Also, to protect units with less than 10 resistance, basically all the 0-1s, the damage negation is even higher than Nightingale's Skill 3. Nightingale has the Arch Dodge, while Haruka has the higher HPS. Levitate also serves to further reduce sustained pressure by disabling the enemies for a few seconds. When in practice, the 7 SP startup, long duration and long cooldown design makes it pretty obvious that the skill encourages the Hella drop and redeploying hit and run playstyle. You don't really want an Abjurer to spend 60 seconds off skill. The significant downtime also partly contributes to its irrelevancy to daily use. The skill is also generally an overkill in easier content where skill 2 is just dominant. Against heavier, that means weight 4 or above enemies, levitate coverage will also be halved, if you're unaware of that mechanic. But the most standard issue for the skill in practice is still the lack of offensive synergy. Levitate is not chainable like stun and bind. Operators who benefit from attacking levitated enemies are very limited as well, most significant being Angelina with the IS module. For a melee unit, enemies being levitated may even be an anti-synergy. So in the end, the skill remains a very defensive support skill, a situation similar to Civilite Eterna Skill 3. Bit of an overkill, but more realistically speaking, players tend to find support skills that are more offensive oriented more relevant for gameplay. Ironically, like her own skill too, so it's understandable. In summary, Haruka is a new generation healer with high coverage sanctuary and decent HPS. The bubble mechanic optimized the sanctuary coverage and off-skill sustain problem of previous Abjurers. The unlimited duration skill 2 provides great use experience, and her skill 3 is a survival reserve that packs a lot of sustain power and the ability to levitate and interrupt incoming attacks. Haruka has been the new daily sustain option ever since her release. The skill is consistent and provides some extra damage, which is always welcomed in casual contents. She's a viable, yet not essential, sustain pick in integrated strategy, especially when the need for survival is high. For a more experienced player, she may not be a must pick, but for easier runs, having her is definitely assuring. For daily rating, she's getting a 9 from me, the kind of impact that when you think of a healer, you begin to start with Haruka. And basically, it's her skill 2 we're looking at. The two-phase warm-up is just an extra click, the downtime isn't that long and tough with her mechanics. In return, the sustain power is generally more than enough, and the damage that comes alongside it may not be very noticeable, but certainly something. That 1.1k DPS is the same level of the OG Eyjafjallajökull skill 2. In advanced content, the offers are basically the same, and I have her at 7. In IS as a more defensive support, it's not always the most cost-efficient pick to draft a 6-star sustain option. Even with high survival pressure, like the IS-6 ending 2 boss with the full-screen fast stomp, you can work around it with survival relics, or you can pick 5-star countermeasures like Rose Salt, Shamale, or Waifu. Not to mention that, if you play casual and does not limit your own pick, having Exia Altar basically solves everything. So again, my best summary, improves your game experience, but not essential. In debuff game modes, her advantage is more on skill 3, a 40-second high damage reduction to better avoid one-shots, which is common with max HP reduction. The on-hit trigger crowd control has some range advantage, as it kinda takes enemies' attack range as an advantage, and can cover a group of enemies. But again, these are theory crafting that has yet to be proven. Overall, her final results set a new standard for sustain operators. She has great mechanics that are supported by decent numbers, simple but effective. We're late for the banner again, so I'm gonna quickly wrap up build analysis. In short, build for the new sustain standards. She's gonna be relevant for some good time. She's a pretty newbie-friendly operator, skill 2 is available in E1, and at skill level 7, the total warm-up time leading up to the second skill use is the same. Her mechanics kinda bring justice to Abjuras, especially on use experience. For schedule and meta, we've talked about the good spot. The only little downside to her design is that eventually she's a defensive support, and it's gonna be impacting her applications in advanced game modes, especially debuff ones like CC, because while survival is important, as they say, offense could turn out to be the best defense. In CCB4, Tragodia is used because while his skill 3 keeps enemies in place, it also chips away their HP with E damage from nervous burst triggers. For similar reasons, sure, skill 3 can provide attack and attack speed bonuses, Monster skill 2 is the best attack speed buff, while both are exceptional in sustaining. These are all competitors to Haruka's application. That's gonna be it for this episode. Thank you all for watching. I'm looking to bring changes to how the series work. I think the current format could need some changes. Some parts of it feels redundant or could need a refresh on delivery. I aim to make some changes to the rating systems as well, to make them reflect operators' performance in the upcoming 6 months more, instead of unproven potential that remains at the theory crafting level. I feel like that's the most practical way to do it, given the current pace of character designs. Anyways, thank you all for watching until the end. Catch you guys in the next one. Bye bye.